Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It makes him strong.
Powerful Lord Vader.
I'm still waiting for all the fan theories about who the giant audience of hooded figures is in the Rise of Skywalker, and I'm waiting for the revelation that it's just a bunch of failed Palpatine clones, and that's all they do is just chill and like egg him on, because like that's really all he needs at the end of the day.
You have failed me for the last time. You will be reduced to hype man. Go over there. It's like this is like when the girl Rey arrives. I want you all to clap and sing, do some really cool choir. If you could sound like this, like pause like an MP3 player, it's like Duel of Fate. So it's like, Huzzah! It's like, if you can get this like that would be really sweet.
You know what's always really cool is when the crowd does like the wave. So we need like a Sith wave.
Vader never would have let me do this, but fuck him, he's dead. Fuck you, Vader.
And on that note, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Partu, joined me today is...
A geek for fun.
Geek for fun. Can we just do an entire episode in the Palpatine voice?
I mean... It's almost fitting for the subject of this discussion being a just as infamously master manipulator total bastard.
I know, right? So yeah, today we're talking about the 2005 5-issue miniseries that, to be honest, I didn't even know it was a 5-issue miniseries until today, because I read it on the DC app. I always thought this was just an OGN, just like it's bastard child Joker. But we were talking about Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, written by Brian Azzarello and drawn by the ever so talented Lee Bermejo. These two are just like best buds. That's all I can figure. They just really like working together. Mm-hmm. And I think this is like their first outing, if I'm not mistaken. Of that duo.
Possibly. Yes, possibly. It's definitely the one that they kind of got on the map for as that duo. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tell from Bermejo's art, it's gorgeous, but it does feel a lot rougher than it is in some of his other works. Not in terms of just rough in terms of skill, just rough in terms of style. Like he's still kind of figuring out what these versions of the characters and Superman and everything will look like in terms of like facial features, or I'm not 100% sure if this has a different colorist, but it has a very distinct feel from, say, Batman Noir.
No, I think you're very much right there. It's also worth noting that, like, the other times Bermejo has done these projects, they've been in, like, more of a pristine format with, again, original graphic novels, or recently the Black Label style with Batman Damned. This is just a normal 5-issue miniseries, so that also might explain why some of the quality of the art's not quite as good as it ends up being for other things.
I think you might be onto something with that. And in general, I'm very curious as to, because you said you didn't know it was different issues when it. if having the issue by issue experience, you still read it all at once, I'm assuming, but just knowing it's meant to be different issues can sometimes change your perspective on things a little more. Did you find this read through feeling that it was like almost each, because it does kind of have that like each issue is its own mini story and then it all culminates with like one underlying narrative, or did it still kind of feel like this could have just been a one shot?
I don't know. It's interesting because I did read this actually a little piece at a time. I decided to read most of it on my lunch at work, and then I read issue 4 on my second break, and then I read issue 5 maybe like 2 hours ago. So I did read this broken up a little bit, not as much as like, you know, month to month or anything. I guess so. I don't know. It's hard to remove myself from that experience of just knowing where the story's going, you know? Knowing, oh, this character's important for later on. This is going to mean a lot later on. Because my first experience with this was always just as one continuous thing, and I'm pretty sure they don't have, like, the to be continued in the graphic novel collections of this series.
No, and all I've ever read it as is through the graphic novel. So I was just curious if there was anything that kind of like made you feel like, because I don't know the release window for this as well, but it is one of those things where almost how it feels like with the DC Black Label books is we've kind of brought this format back in a big bad way, and I feel like that's kind of, this particularly did feel like the big, I have no idea if it was chronologically or anything, but this did feel like the big start of not just, okay, we're going to start doing superhero projects like you say, Spawn Joker, and then we've got Azzarello's other work, and even Bermejo's other work, and some other writers here and there, doing similar sort of things of just like out of continuity or vaguely continuity takes on characters in a more adult style format. That kind of seemed to be all the rage during the mid to late 2000s. And then we're kind of going back to that, but just hopefully the results will match the quality of the things and avoid some of the lower ones. It also was kind of like a big period of just like, let's get some creators to just do some really stellar Superman work. And this, I feel like, is in terms of Azzarello specifically, because Bermejo can draw Superman all ding dong day and not be fucking gorgeous. That man was just born to make me in awe or in abject terror, like holy crap. But in terms of just exploring the world of Superman, Azzarello has done a bit here and there since, but it's never been on this level, and this actually holds true to me for just all of his DC work. Is I feel like this is Lex Luthor is the character I think he understands the most. Say that you will about him as a person or anything like that. I honestly don't know that much. I'm just only can work with his body of work and what his work has said. But I feel like on every DC character, he's in almost all of his other work with them, he's trying to make them more like Lex Luthor. But I'm like, I can see why, because how he writes Lex in this, and how this kind of reinvented Lex, after in the 90s we kind of took his balls off, let's say. I'm really, really fascinated by what this Lex Luthor became and how it informs where he is now and compared to other versions, and just as a piece in and of itself, I think it has a lot to say about the character, which I appreciate.
I think that's fair. This to me is like the perfect Lex Luthor. I love everything about how Lex Luthor is written in here. He's like unquestionably evil, but he's like an evil person who's convinced himself he's good. in a really, really fascinating way. And I love that about him so much. It's like he's a bastard with maybe some level of a point, but he's lost all credibility of that point as he's just gotten so deep into things. And he's just a psychopath for it. Everything he does in here is just so monumentally twisted, and I love it. Like, he arranges this multi-billion-dollar thing to happen in ways that, like, don't even... Like, people die along his way just to make Superman look bad. Like, that's the thing, is he sacrifices hundreds of lives just to make Superman look bad. And lives he doesn't even necessarily have to. He puts in danger. Like the Union boss. That, like, the Union was supposed to... there's that whole scene in this where, like, the Union is got a contract and they're debating... or they're holding stuff up for him. And it's all about what the workers are going to get paid once the thing is open to the public. And Lex Luthor still threatens that guy's life and family in order to get what he wants. Even though what he really wants doesn't matter, because they would all be screwed anyway once the building goes down. That shit. Oh.
One of my favorite things about Lex Luthor, and a good portrayal of Lex Luthor, that no matter what direction you can take him, you can always redeem a Lex Luthor portrayal with just making it clear how much he fucking hates the alien. And that like, just down to, like, never referring to him as a him. It's an it. Like, that shit. That level of just spite and hate and every... Like, Grant Morrison kind of put it best. Where it's like, he sees Luthor as, like, the worst parts of humanity, if Superman is the best of us. They're very much yin and yang, because you can't really have a good Superman without a good Luthor. You can't have a good Luthor without a good Superman. Because Luthor is an interesting villain where you can have other relationships like that. You can have other relationships with, like, say, Thrawn in The Flash, or we were talking about, like, say, Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, where the villain just lives because they hate the hero. And that's always really interesting to me. But they're always that kind of level of detachment because it's such a personal thing. Luthor, when he hates Superman, and his arguments for it are every time you've ever went down and been like, oh, fuck that, they don't deserve that. Like, this, it's that as a character, which is such a raw ass human petty thing. But at the same time, everyone's felt it at some point in their lives and will always feel that moment again and again and again, just because it's how we're wired. And how Luthor is in this, not only is he that, but he's based his entire worldview and how he views good and evil entirely on how it relates to Superman. And he's rebuilt everything in concepts of what it relates to Superman. And that is just so interesting to me. Like, you get the, just the ending for a second, where he legitimately is almost like breaking down, trying to justify why it was okay for him to do this awful crime that killed 60 plus kids, so many other people. We didn't even know how many people died when the building came down. All of this, a person like you can read into, like, what his relationship with Hope was, but that was a thing that obviously did affect him. And then he goes through all of this listing off, and he's just like, all of it would have been worth it if I could just change one person's mind about you. And I'm like, oh, Jesus! The level of devotion of, like, if Joe Schmo on the street who was selling me papers says fuck Superman after this, I won, you alien dog. Like, it's that, and I'm just like, oh, give me more of that. I will eat that up, because that is just some great character writing. That is just fascinating to see how a person can get to that. And I think you were very much right with the part you had earlier about how he's convinced himself to be good. Is part of what makes a good Lex Luthor to me is also one that no matter how far he goes, you can always still understand why Superman at some level is like, let me always offer him a hand still. No matter how far we go, I'll always give him a chance. Like that scene in All-Star where he's like, Luthor, I'm gonna die, just please make an effort, and he just spits on the glass. Like, that level of this Luthor has moments, and although his reasoning is completely fucked up and he doesn't really understand it, he has moments where he does do genuine good things for people. Like say with the thing with like his janitor at the start, but then he immediately does good for that person by screwing over another person.
Exactly.
And yeah, but it's like he's still, unlike say someone like the Joker, it's clear that Luthor still does feel things like kindness and decency and honor. He just doesn't know what to do with those, and then uses them to justify his awful shit.
Yeah, like, you know, there's that whole thing where the scientist that invents hope. It's like, I promised him his family would be safe, and yet they're dead in this book as just, you know, collateral damage in all of Luthor's scheming. And I'm not even sure if it's actually collateral damage or if he had them killed to tie up loose ends, you know? It's left just vague enough that you can wonder about that. And that's just, it's just delectable how far he goes with that shit. One of the scenes that I really, really like in this is the way that Luthor talks to people as if he leaves them any kind of choice, as if he's trying to be a good guy still. Like again the negotiation with the union boss, he's still like, oh, maybe we can meet and work something out to smooth things over. You understand my position on this. You understand mine. As he's like, as the guy's about to be kicked off a skyscraper if he says anything to even remotely upset Lex Luthor, you know?
And you got the same moment of that when you've got, he's like, oh, I hear you're having doubts. Why don't you come over and we'll discuss if we can up your pay? He's like, I'm not coming over. It's like, well, I'll send the car around. It's like, Luthor, I'm not coming over. It's already on its way. And it's like, yep. He's like, you're going to get killed. That's one of those things where a really strong bit of writing that this entire book, the only thing he talks to with disdain is Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else, he puts on this mask of kindness. Or is it even a mask? Does he still somehow think to himself he is giving them a choice? Because he knows he could think his way out of this, and he believes in human potential, when really it's just he believes in his own potential. It's nothing about humanity, it's about his own ego. But he always justifies himself and these things with, this is for the greater good and the true good and what really matters. His whole conversation with Bruce Wayne, I think, can be dissected on so many different levels from both of those characters. Simply because you read it the first time and everyone knows Bruce Wayne's putting on the facade. But how much is Lex, and to what degree? And then are there moments where it slips? And are there any moments where it is just Lex and Batman talking at that point? Mm-hmm. And when is it just always Bruce? And it's like, it's really... Stuff like that is really interesting because you have a character like Batman, who in many ways is very similar to Lex Luthor. And I think it's telling that Batman's one of Superman's best friends, which is just, it shows you the potential that could have been there, because Batman is just as impulsive, Batman is just as paranoid, Batman is just as brilliant, Batman is just as driven, and yet Batman has such a ironclad grasp of his moral code and what lines he will and will not cross. It kind of keeps him centered. Luthor feels like he lost that at like age 12.
If he ever had it to begin with. Yeah. God damn it. Me. One thing that I really like about that scene with Bruce and Lex is the way that Lex plays on Bruce's inherent paranoia. Like, Lex goes through and he lays out, you know, the most Batman argument for why you need a Superman counter, you know? Like, and Lex is playing dumb that he doesn't know who Bruce Wayne is. He clearly does in this, which I think is just great to add that in. So, like, he just offers this perfect, like, here's what you think. I'm just telling you what you think, so you'll agree with me. And then he gives him the kryptonite, and it's just, it's in that moment that I think it really works, and you get the moment a little bit later where Batman calls him and is like, yeah, whatever you need. Because he doesn't even realize that this is for a long-term, or for a short-term thing. He thinks that this is, like, long-term. There's no way it's going to be a problem overnight or anything like that. He just wants a Superman counter on the books. And then just to play Batman into his own little manipulation. The one thing I think is a bit weak, and it's kind of always been my biggest problem with this book, and it's not just because, oh, Batman should win every fight with Superman. It's just the Superman fight comes the fuck out of nowhere. Like, I have no idea to this day why the hell Superman shows up in Gotham to fight Batman at that moment.
It's really weird, this whole... My thing with that as well is the implied timeline for this book is super strange. Because you have the line at the beginning where Mona, his secretary that I always keep misremembering, because I think it's Mercy every time I read it.
It just should have been, really.
Yeah, basically, just a name change. But she says that Superman's been here since she was a little girl. And yet, it's very clear that Batman and Superman haven't met yet. Because this reads like first meeting kind of thing. Especially just with how the fight is depicted. It's not Superman how he's normally drawn from Lex's vision. It is just a normal looking Superman that's just happened to be like grunting and roaring at Batman. And then Batman, I do like how it's executed, because it does kind of feel like Batman got caught the fuck off guard before he could plan it, and then Superman just took him down like instant, which is how most of their fights 99% of the time should go, if you're not being good at, like, not in this big look at the Superman fanboy, but I'm just like, if you are going to like write it without Batman being at the top of his game, if he fucks up and it's over. So that's when Batman does win, it's more impressive, because it shows you the level of planning he had to go into. Because just one mistake of not being ready at all times got him make him lose the fight instantly. So I appreciate that, but at the same time, I wonder if this was Bermejo going, let me top Jim Lee. He did his one, let me do mine, and then Jim Lee that comes back with Frank Miller is just like, no, let me do it again. So it seems like that was happening quite a lot during these few years, back and forth from either side. So I think like maybe that was part of the reason. It's like, well, we got Batman and a Lex Luthor story, we got him to fight Superman, and they just found a way to work it in with, because I think as random as it is happening, I think it works really nicely with it being completely silent, but Lex Luthor just talking about what a monster Superman is over it, and like how it means for humanity not to have a chance. Because here you have in Batman the peak of humanity, like even more than Lex Luthor. Like if Lex Luthor is just a genius, Batman has made himself the peak of all facets of humanity, not just his intellect. It's everything you can imagine, Batman has at least a proficiency in. That's kind of his gimmick. He's not the best at everything, but he's proficient at everything, which no one else is. So he's got that, and yet Superman makes him a complete joke in this, to the fact that he falls on his ass and makes Batman just like completely helpless. You can tell an artist knows how to use his work right if you can do a book where Superman looks more intimidating than Batman. Like that is a testament, I feel like, just from, especially without having to change either of their costumes. So I feel like that's strong work. But you're right, the motives and reasoning of just anything Superman does in this book are left intentionally vague, but I feel that's the one place where it doesn't work as well, knowing why the fuck Superman's doing this.
Yeah, and like, it's a real shame, because for as little as we get of Superman in this, he's written really well in character. Like, just, God, the Superman floating outside of Lex Luthor's window is still the best thing ever. It always will be. That shit is just fire. And, you know, Superman gets one line of dialogue in this entire story, and it's just the most cutting thing that Lex Luthor could possibly hear. You know? Just Lex goes through that whole diatribe, and Superman just cuts him down with 2 words. You're wrong. Ah, it's so good.
I can see your soul. Which is just the most intimidating thing from Lex's perspective, but you can also really read that as if this was a Superman comic, that would be like almost like a hopeful like olive branch of like, I know you can still do good. But in Lex's opinion, he's like, oh fuck. What, this thing can see my soul? Is he being literal? Is he being metaphor? Like Lex's mind just does not understand that. And I think how it's framed as well is you in the audience are meant to take Luthor's side, and like we can put in his perspective, and you're meant to see Superman in the same light. And every trick in the book, both Bermejo and Azzarello are using to make Superman seem wrong and unnatural and terrifying, without doing that, without making him like a parody or an injustice version. It is still just straight Superman, but the lens, it's a funhouse nightmare wheel lens. But that's all it is. It's just the lens. Everything he does is still just Superman. And I think that's a very strong argument that a weaker creative team wouldn't have been able to do as effectively. I feel like they would have had to, well, we can't make Superman look evil just as on our own talent, so we're going to have to make him say evil shit, or make him do evil shit, or like questionable shit that a non-Superman canonly would do. In this, he's down to the part of just like, almost to like the thing that strengthens Luthor's argument is like his innate goodness, and he sees that as a weakness. He's not trying to frame it as Luthor knows Superman is secretly evil or anything. He's like, no, I know exactly what he's here for and what he's doing, but that in and of itself is wrong, which I think is a much more interesting argument than, say, a Batman versus Superman, where it's just like, you can't be good because this and this. It's just like, Luthor's like, no, you are good, I can understand that, but you're gonna kill us all by being that.
No, I think you're absolutely right, though, about the idea that he's portrayed as truly all good, and it gets to that whole notion that's really a big theme, especially in the first issue, of Luthor talking about how, like, humanity is this race of explorers, this like always striving to be better, or to be the best version of ourselves, and yet Superman is better than any one person can hope to be. he's literally a god compared to the best of humanity like Batman is. So I think that just creates a really, really interesting dynamic to be able to show, because the worst thing that Superman does in this entire book is save a murderer's life. You know? That is just... it just hits so hard right there.
And I feel like that's one of the just to stay on that train of thought there for a moment. That whole scene, I think, is a really strong examination and kind of just argument for a... Because this is one thing like I always really do like, is I really do love Superman in the real world as much as possible stories when they're done right, because I think they can be almost the most powerful superhero stories given that treatment, because I think it has the most to say about us as a society, especially with Superman, given he is the superhero. It's kind of... There's a reason why every time you get like a Invincible or The Boys or anything like that, they're always dealing with the Superman archetype, because that's the core of the idea. It lets you really get to the mythic power of just superhero as an idea if you just use Superman's imagery. So getting to put Superman himself in a situation that you can imagine happening, and completely understanding that, yeah, Lex Luthor's right. People watching this on TV don't agree with Superman.
Mm-hmm. Like, that's... Azzarello, say what you will about him as a writer, but he has a poet's vocabulary. He has just this perfect... He always chooses, like, the exact perfect words for characters to say. They always... His dialogue and narration really hits home. And the one that got me in this is, on his best day, Winslow's shot was a failed human being. I made him into a monster. And I'm just like, God, like he's got, there's pride in that, you know? There's pride in just how damn much work that took. And just all of that narration through that final issue is an alien who does not see a human being, but just wires and machinery. He's like, Superman fucking laser eyes through hope because he just sees another robot. He's not, or from what we can tell, he's not thinking about the wider context that people think she's actually a person. Meanwhile, Lex is behind the controls, like, fighting Superman vicariously through hope. Oh, God.
And it's one of those things as well of once you know that reveal, you can come back and you can have a look at the things like okay, so Superman has these enhanced senses, and we know originally Clark Kent was kind of calling out for like the selling of a superhero, but you then realize, oh yeah, the moment he sees her, he knows she's not a human. You can tell. So he knows there's something shady going on immediately, or either she doesn't know or anything. He just can tell she's not breathing, or she can tell her heartbeat's something different, or anything across that line. So I think it's interesting as well that even despite that, it's not as if he is going to destroy her. Mm-hmm. He just stops her with like a heat vision to the abdomen, and it's just like a flesh wound. It's very much like not a non-lethal spot, even for someone who's artificial. It's Lex who blows her up.
Yep, because he just needs it to look good, right? He doesn't need it to. Yeah, like, oh God, I love how much that all comes together. And then here's the thing for me. I've talked a lot of shit about Joker over the years. I really do not like that book. And the scene that's always bugged the crap out of me, the Joker does not cry. I can never ever see it. But like, I feel like the Lex Luthor crying in this is what made the Joker cry in Joker. Is like Azzarello figured it out how to make it work really, really well for one villain, and so he tried to do it for the other, and it just failed. But like, my reasoning behind why it works so well here is he's really crying completely for himself. All his tears, everything, is for what he cost himself. And I find that really, really interesting. Because the only thing that can move Lex Luthor to tears is something being taken from him. You know?
Uh-huh.
It's like he had to sacrifice the only thing he could love, which was someone only he could create. And that's super fucking interesting.
Especially because he basically goes out of his way and creates hope. Just the naming of that is so fucking perfect.
Oh, I know.
Such an asshole.
I know.
Superman killed Hope on live TV. Like, come on, man. Such a dick move. But yeah, like that whole dynamic is fascinating because you get to see the first idea of what does Lex Luthor want a superhero to be? What does Lex Luthor want that idea to be? And it's someone who talks to the people, someone who works on the ground with the community and is a part of like an extra group and is being very open and honest, no secret identity, just this person helping out for the good of the humanity. It's like, oh, those are good things for like community superheroes. That's like Luke Cage. That's like Wally West Flash. Those are really cool ideas. Oh, maybe Lex Luthor's got a point. And then you also realize I want to be able to control them and I want to be able to take them out at the push of a button.
And I want to be able to fuck them.
He wants to be able to fuck up as well. There's so much in that of just like, this is what Lex Luthor wishes every member of the Justice League was. Probably with the fucking part as well, just because it's such a power move.
Alright, Dark Knight, your appointment with Mr. Luthor begins now.
Hey, Luthor did immediately start off the conversation. It's like, just dinner and that's it. And I'm just saying, Bruce is probably coming on to him a little bit. He's got that animal magnetism. That's the ship that we need to get going.
There we go. DBDC.
we already did it with the like animosity to each other. You can just say that was like an X.
I know, right?
Bruce always ends up fighting.
Listen, Goku. During my years of training, Lex Luthor and I were in a relationship.
It was wild and intense, but I couldn't go along with it any longer. He tried to install a chip in my head that would let him blow me up as I fought you.
Anyway.
Anyway, also note, this is why this would not work with Kakarot, because Goku 100% would just be like, alright, Hope, calm just fucking kill her anyway. You don't need to make him look bad with collateral damage.
I know, he just fucking like blows her up and then everyone's on the ground. It's like, you killed this lovely woman. Nah, she's a robot. It's all good.
It's a robot. Makes sense. But yeah, that's one of those things which I think is really interesting to examine, and her character is interesting, and I always like when these kind of just characters that are made for a single story and only exist for the single story exist. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there probably has been someone who's just been like, well, Luthor could have made another one, and he's got like, quite a few, and they just become like part of Luthor's like entourage. But I also do kind of like the idea of just a one and done evil man scientist scheme by Lex Luthor that he got a bit attached to just because he fell in love with the idea, and then we never see her again. But she herself is completely fine and normal, and you could see her as like a B-list member of the Justice League or something. She's not inherently a bad person or anything. She's doing everything for what she thinks is the good, and every decision that she makes in this, which is can be seen as negative or gone too far, she doesn't make, Luthor makes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she's got like that Manchurian candidate kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really, really cool. Like, it's a tragedy in every sense when she dies fighting Superman. Like, no one is happy about this. No one. Not even Lex Luthor is happy that he had to do it. And of course, he doesn't have to. It's all just this glorified delusion about himself. It's just so good. Lex Luthor is like that kid who became an atheist but never got out of that fucking phase of just having to prove why God doesn't exist, you know? It's just like that kind of a dickhead.
But he's so passionate about it, and even then, it's not necessarily trying to prove that God doesn't exist. He's trying to prove that God does exist, and he's dangerous. We need to find a way to take him out, which is a whole other level of just interesting things. Because as well, how he's portrayed with Superman in this, I very much love that all their dialogue, Superman is always above him. He's always flying above him, even though Luthor purposely puts himself in the biggest tower he can to try and match that. You get the scene, which is very interesting to me, where Luthor is flying out to go to Gotham, and he's talking about how that this is his favorite view of Metropolis, and yet he just, again, there should be some like a moment of, well, maybe he does see this like this, maybe we can get some common ground, because Superman, the exact same thing. He's like, no, I get it, I understand completely what you're talking about, but he just can't ever imagine he'll feel something like that, and he's just always looking down on us. Like, he manages to twist every bit of common ground he might have with Superman and make it vile and make it awful, which is so interesting to me.
Absolutely. Like, just everything about this story just really, really works. I can't help but feel like this is the one that Azzarello was really waiting to tell for a very long time. And then everything after that, like, this is the one that he was waiting to tell, and he got it out there. And everything after that's kind of like, not an afterthought, but like, things he had to come up with later, you know? Which is weird to me, because he's mostly floated around the Bat family of books. He's written a lot of Joker stories, because there's Joker Europa, there's, obviously Batman Damned, he did the Dark Knight 3, he's done so many Bat family books. The other thing he's well known for after this is the Wonder Woman run, which is not well loved. But, like, it's so weird that I don't think he's really gone back to Superman, has he?
No, I don't think so. I think he might have done some stuff in New 52, like an issue here and there. But other than nothing as big as this for sure, which is strange because I feel like I can feel like, I think the biggest thing he did since this is For Tomorrow, which is Henry Cavill's favorite thing, and it's a decent story. I think it's got some really gorgeous Jim Lee art, and I think it's got some interesting things to say, but it also is very much, all of his stories about Superman do seem to be about questioning if Superman's a good idea. And I'm starting to when you make that your only story, it really makes me think of how do you view the character. I do believe that part of why this book works so well and why some of the other things don't, and maybe why I'm just like, I'm happy Azzarello did this, but I wouldn't necessarily want to see him do other things, is part of me believes he thinks he aligns closer with Lex Luthor's view than his. I think this book works so well is because it's written by someone who's sympathetic to that worldview of Lex Luthor. I think everyone is to an extent. Lex Luthor's interesting as a villain because he can always remain sympathetic even when he becomes awful, because he's always got that he's got that really solid ass argument. But it breaks down when you look at it too much. But just when he says it, it's like, oh no, yeah, maybe he is right, kind of thing. Which is the best sign of a good villain. Like Grant Morrison has even said, like, oh yeah, some days when I wake up, I feel more like Lex Luthor. Some days when I wake up, I feel more like Batman. It's just like these characters are meant to embody moods and feelings and moments in time, and that's why they're so big. So I feel like that might be the strength of the work, but at the same time, it's something I noticed where he as a writer leans to this more cynical view of superheroes and the ineffectual of especially the powered ones, and like the horror of like the superpowered ones. That it makes me curious to see if he did ever have to just write a straight Superman story that wasn't about questioning Superman.
I guess you could be onto something there. I don't know. It's just he wrote the perfect Lex Luthor. You figure someone would ask him to write Lex Luthor again. God damn it. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. Azarello to me, I think, is actually a really, really talented writer, just in like the form of it. Because again, his dialogue, his dialogue and his narration is just every word is so purposeful. Nothing feels wasted. That I'm always really impressed when I read his scripts. It's one of those things where I would be shocked if he doesn't do it at least 5 drafts of a story. Because just everything just is so this is the worst podcast ever.
It's fine.
Everything is so purposeful and so well thought out that, like, I literally can't imagine a better way to put it, you know? Like, there's like, moments in movies, like, every movie has, like, that one really quotable line or moment or something. I feel like that's everything Azarello writes. Like, every line of dialogue, every bit of narration that, like, that is something you could quote and say back is just, like, all of it is on that level of just really perfectly refined dialogue. At least in his written stuff. I know he wrote the script for Killing Joke, and that, I mean, I can't really remember much besides, it's just sex, it's no big deal. I don't know what the fuck to make of that thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit now. At least in his prose level stuff, his written word stuff, he's incredibly good at just perfectly refining everything.
Which I feel like is something where when you're doing a book from the perspective of a character, it's a strong way to really nail that character's voice, and you can always tell when the voice isn't right. I feel like the character I have the most this with is like Superman. Not Superman, Spider-Man. Superman maybe, but Spider-Man, I still think a lot of bad Superman writers can get his voice right, but Spider-Man particularly, I feel like has a distinct voice that some writers just don't have. That could tell like immediately if he's coming on. Like the joke to normal comment ratio is normally a good like incline on like a good red flag immediately. Like how big is his initial text box will let you know if this is a good Spider-Man writer or not. So there's one of those things. Luthor kind of is the same for me, where if you look at how John Byrne wrote Lex Luthor, or even how he is in the Donner movies or something like that, it's just, you can tell immediately it's not the character. It's just not Lex Luthor to me. It's some other guy. And I feel like this was the best attempt of marrying the Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League businessman Lex Luthor with the mad scientist, complete intellectual who's got his hand in every cookie jar from the Silver Age and the Bronze Age. Like all of that melded into one to make like the definitive Lex. I still would like it to make this completely perfect. I would like a little bit more mad science in there, just like a tad, like another scene of. Because one of my favorite Lex Luthor depictions that kind of informs this is I'm completely fading on the name, but it was written by the author of Miracle Monday, and basically the whole gimmick of Lex Luthor in that is he doesn't question Superman's identity because he just assumes he must have multiple because he does, and like Lex Luthor in his daily life has just like 5 different identities. LexCorp is just one of his many companies around the world that he does, and like the amount of time he spends running LexCorp is like 2% of his day, and the rest of it is dedicated to killing Superman. And that's just like ridiculous level of like how intelligent and efficient this guy is. And you get some of that here where we see a lot of him is doing business, but none of it's for business. All of it is for killing Superman, even when you don't know that. You're thinking, what is he doing? Why is he just throwing off the plans of the table completely casually? Is he just being a wacky, confident businessman? He's like, no, he knows full well that this shit matters because he's gonna blow it up.
Yep. Like,
and he probably got a killer insurance deal.
I know, like, he probably made money off of this. Like, that's the crazy part. Like a building in Metropolis, of course we'll insure that. It's a LexCorp building, right? There's
Superman will save it.
Yeah, exactly. Just like it's, and like little details, you know, to couple it back to the writing thing. The union guy, he says, "Oh, he's having us use cheap materials and faulty tools." Of course he is, because he wants it to collapse. He doesn't want to have.
He doesn't want it to be strong.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have a chance that Superman is able to save this building. That's it's just so good. You know, like we've been talking a lot about the writing. One thing I want to make sure we talk about too is Bermejo's art, because, God, it's like I put him up on that same level as like Alex Ross, as just like it's that damn good. Alex Ross and Steven Sejic and Lee Bermejo can all go out drinking together. Just this incredibly beautiful, highly realistic, detailed art that at the same time has this just expressiveness over the top level to it. But like the building blows up, right? And one of it's one of my favorite panels. You almost see Lex Luthor's face in the explosion. It's so subtle, but it's there. It's really, really cool because like you can see kind of like the outline of his head, and then there's like smoke clouds where the eyes and mouth would be. It's just such a perfect little thing to just, you know, and it gets to a level where it's like, okay, is that just like the artist doing a cool thing? Is that there in the script, or is that just like actually there in the story that Lex Luthor somehow designed Hope's bomb and the collapse of the building to just show Superman and Superman only? It was him. He did all of this. You know, like is that like his signature on all of it? It works on so many levels. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And like Superman straight away confronts him about it, which is again it speaks a lot to their dynamic here, where they get so little interaction. Part of me also really likes how the physicality and the power of Superman is portrayed here, not necessarily through like destroying stuff or punching stuff, but just how he poses. He very much is like a sculpture here. He feels the most like, oh, this is like a Greek god come to life and among us. Kind of the same effect like Dr. Manhattan has, where it's just like this image of perfection that is among us, but at the same time it's so powerful. Like he recreates the Action Comics cover when he's lifting the car, and it's like one of my favorite images, and it's like just off to the side. It's not even giving like a full splash, but it's just like part of the montage. It's all these Superman images as Lex Luthor is like viewing the view screen, and it's just amazingly powerful how like the S is raised and it's shining. He's got the trunks in the perfect like proportions, so they just look that they complement the form and everything. It's just like
chill with your
had
trunks.
to bring up. Look, man, look. If anyone ever says, "Oh, the trunks are goofy," bring this shit up. This Superman would fucking break Injustice Superman's neck. Are you kidding me? This Superman is intimidating as fuck, and he wears his underwear on the outside like a champ.
When are we gonna get Adam to draw DBDC Goku with trunks? You know, when's that happening?
That's his final arc. That's his last transformation. He just gets trunks.
The power! It's overwhelming! I'm going even further beyond!
Just like, huh? Slides them up. There you go. There you go. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so that's just one of my favourite things about it as well. Another really interesting bit of art detail that I notice every time I pick this up is just how Luthor's expressions are like key to making this work. Like one of my favorite looks of Luthor is where he's giving the big speech to Superman about at the end, where he's just like, even if I just change one person's mind, when he's just got like his hand on his face, he genuinely looks so passionate, and it's not a game. It's not a I beat you, Superman, ha 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 ha. It's I'm trying to slay this personal demon of humanity, and no one else believes me. And it's like he's such a martyr in his own eyes. And how he's portrayed that is that's like if this was a fantastic actor giving the performance of their career, and Bermejo like puts that on the page, and that always strikes me. It's the difference between making that confrontation at the end a monologue of a Saturday morning cartoon, because it can go into that territory, or making it one man bears his soul to this alien who can already see it, and you just get, wow, this is some heavy stuff. And I really love all of that. I also really like how he draws Bruce Wayne. I love the hairstyle. I think that's a really cool look for Bruce, and especially like when he's specifically Bruce Wayne and he's doing the smile and he's doing the coy act. This actually might be one of my favorite depictions of Bruce Wayne, the Playboy, I've seen, because he seems completely, this isn't Batman. This guy can never be Batman. But at the same time, he's not bumbling. He's not incompetent. He's almost got like a Han Solo kind of vibe to him, of where he's just having fun, and you can understand why people would be drawn to that. And like Luthor even says, he's got this charisma that I don't understand why Bruce Wayne. I want to like him, but even if I know the truth about him, I still don't really get it, why he's going for all of this. Which makes sense from Luthor's perspective, because Luthor feels like you should be proud of it, right? Like if Luthor was Batman, he'd let people know immediately. You worship my achievements. I am the symbol. Look at how cool I am. Whereas Batman has to have that degree of separation and all of that. Luthor doesn't get that, so he doesn't really understand Bruce's whole mentality and everything. But he gets it to a point where he can understand that the Bruce Wayne thing is a facade, but he also lets himself get kind of wrapped up into it. It's a conversation. And there's a moment I like, which is also to tie to the art point, where they're having dinner and Bruce is having all the wine, and the conversation just shifts to Bruce figuring out he's talking about Superman, and how that's drawn is so good. That is just, okay, he's Batman. I love that. I love that shift of like he puts his sunglasses down a little bit and he's Batman.
Well, like that's really good, because it's around that same moment that it's just such a good punch of a dialogue line where he's like, "Oh, I thought we were discussing business, not tilting at windmills." It's like, you just fucking called him Don Quixote. God damn. Like, and if that is not the perfect metaphor for fucking Lex Luthor of all things, just fighting this invisible enemy that is not an enemy in the first place. God, what a diagnosis. It's so good. One thing I really like about that scene too, is the the way that Bruce is written, because like again, this is '05, so Batman Begins was either just out or like on the horizon, and so hilariously, Bruce Wayne is written exactly like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Like he fucking orders the most complicated fucking thing on the menu and is like so specific about all the details. It's just I like it's just so perfect. I adore that. That little touch. I have no idea if that's intentional, but I like to imagine it is. So there's like that the try to think of other artistic things in this. Okay, so as much as I do like the art in this, I will be a little critical. I kind of hate Hope's costume or lack thereof.
Yeah, not a fan of that design.
Yeah, it's like Power Girl but on crack. Like she's just got chest window and my boobs are like on two different sides of my ribs. As I don't know, this is a weird choice. Like it specifically adds nothing, and with a character like this, you probably could have even added more if the costume was part of the character too. Like if the costume was an expression of the character, and here it feels like it's just, TNA kind of thing.
You could have got a very specific kind of give her almost like a Supergirl-esque costume, where it's like no flesh, it's maybe just like the skirt or something to show just like innocence and a very kind of just like this is America's sweetheart kind of thing. It's like she's designed to be the most like universally beloved and accepted icon, and then she dies in a fight with Superman. Like make it tragic, because how she's depicted as is with like the really revealing costume, it's one of those things where I'm just like I think maybe they're coming out with the idea that Lex Luthor would create something where she is just an object. But at the same time, I'm also kind of feeling he could have put more thought in that to make, how can I make this the most like a national tragedy when this person dies?
Yeah, that's kind of my thing too. It really didn't feel like it added much. I guess if you could probably make an argument for sexualizing her to that degree is part of the branding of her, I guess. You could probably make that argument. I don't know if I 100% agree with it, but that's something I guess I hadn't completely thought of. So I might have to go back and kind of re-examine the story a little bit in that regard. One thing I am really glad about is the fact that this has never had a sequel, but at the same time, it's just vague enough that it could pretty much fit into any continuity. I've really, really liked that detail about it.
Those are the strengths of like a really good Elseworld, where apart from like the Batman thing, that's the only thing that makes me feel like, well, you probably want to set it early, but then at the same time you got the Mona line, in which you want to set it late. So I don't know where you put this, but maybe you give it that kind of like ethereal sense of Lex Luthor's your narrator, so how much of what you're seeing is actually true, which always gives like a whole other dimension to it. Because I think that's interesting about just how everyone reacts to him in this. Like in Lex Luthor's perspective, is Hope like fangirling over him like a childish girl, or is that just how he wished that went down? Like there's a way you can kind of look at it with that that kind of rationality, which almost adds more to the book. But at the same time, I do feel like just a line here or two removed there could have made this fit like at more kind of like universal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. To be fair to the Mona point, like you could make the argument she's like 21,
Sure.
or younger even. The way that Lex treats her, which is again, it's like really. I guess we haven't talked much about Lex, betting Hope and all that stuff. Because the way he treats Mona is just like so much trash. This woman is like throwing herself at Lex throughout the entirety of the series. And yet he ignores her at every turn, and when he doesn't ignore her, he's insulting her. And then he just, like, is lusting after Hope because it's, like, the thing he created. So it's, like, he treats her like he treats Mona like a child, and he treats his literal robot child daughter more like a lover, which is just really fucking weird and creepy. And it just kind of goes to that sense that Lex Luthor is bad at people.
He's in love with ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get how to communicate with someone as a person, because all he knows and thinks it and rationalizes is the big game, the big plan. So I feel like he will only. I think that's also where, like, many depictions get kind of like he has a thing for Lois Lane. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, again, it's entirely a power move against Superman. Of, like, if I could get Lois Lane, fuck him, right? It's entirely, like, a very that ownership kind of thing. And I think that's the same with Hope. He's just like, I can build a superhero that everyone loves, and she's perfect. She's everything I'd want her to be, specifically because I know she's gonna break Superman's heart. So that's the hottest thing in the world to me. That just gets him going. So you have that. And for some reason, man, I don't know if you know about this, but Lex Luthor has always been fucking robots.
Really? Is that like a thing that he does? I guess like Matrix Supergirl, huh?
No, he also had again, like I said, always he had a robotic duplicate of Lois Lane that had Gorilla Grodd's voice that he fucked.
Why did it have Gorilla Grodd's voice?
Look, man, that's not a question you should be asking. That is the least on the bucket list of shit you need to dissect with that sentence.
Yeah, no, because, like, I'm thinking about that. He had, like, Matrix Supergirl. In Young Justice, he's got Robotic Mercy. And, I mean, you just have to assume. Like, I always assumed Lex was fucking Mercy. So if you're just gonna make her a robot, now he's just fucking Robot Mercy.
Lex just be fucking robots.
Lex Luthor just be fucking robots. I guess.
Which is so funny.
Lex Luthor X Android 18. He's bald. She's into bald guys. Oh my god. There you go.
That's true. That's true. That's legit. Lex Luthor's just a buffer, taller Krillin. he's TN with baggage. So there's all of that, but at the same time, as funny as that is, it does kind of work for the character in that, for all his talk of how humanity is the best and how he loves it, he can't stand anything humanly. There's too much. Like, he's like, nope, if I'm not in full control, nope. I can't actually imagine Lex Luthor having sex with anyone that he does not have a position of power over.
Oh, that is an interesting point.
I cannot imagine he can let himself get physically close to someone in that vulnerable state if he doesn't know he can take them out during it. Which is so fucked up and dark, but it fits him perfectly, and it's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I don't know, Lex Luthor is, he's kind of a bad guy, who knew? One thing I want to talk about, before we wrap up is, I really don't like that this book has been rebranded over the years since, the Man of Steel movie came out. I believe newer printings of it are just sold as Lex Luthor, and I think it's really, really important what the actual title of this book is, which is Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. You know? I think that title's very important.
I'm with you there, because there's so much to dissect in that. And Man of Steel is probably my least favourite nickname for Superman. Mm-hmm. You can tell by my outro, my favourite is Champion of the Oppressed. I also quite like Man of Tomorrow, or even the Metropolis Marvel and stuff like that. Like, I think all of those fit Superman as a character more. And Man of Steel always felt so cold and not very descriptive of him as a character, more just like how people view him. But for Lex Luthor, it's so fucking spot on.
Absolutely, like, because that's the whole point of this is he's less he spends all this time talking about the pinnacles of humanity in this book, but he's less human than everybody else in this series, including Superman. And that's the thing,
the
that
robots he fucks.
yeah, including those fuck robots. That's just what Clark Kent's like ultimate takedown of Lex Luthor has to be. It's just like, this guy just makes sex robots. What a fucking weirdo.
Right?
Mr. Luther, is that a robot you just stuck your dick in? You, God
Yes,
damn it,
I can
Clark
get
Kent.
you one. Presenting the new Lex Fuckbots. Oh my god, re-elect him now. Why do they all have Gorilla Grodd's voice?
Don't fetish shame me. Don't kink shame me.
Grodd was the one who wanted it, okay? He was like, put me in a female body, Lex, make me pretty.
Oh god. I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where like Lex Luthor is just so like just everything wrong with the world. If he was less smart, he'd just end up being like a serial killer or some shit. But he's just like this horrendous genius, and that is just absolutely fascinating for him. Yeah, I really fucking like this story. I think it's a really good comic. This is one of those things I recommend to people if they really want like a good Superman, a good Lex Luthor story. I do think that this is, for as much as this focuses on Lex Luthor, it still does tell a really good Superman story at the end of the day. And so I really do love this one. Guess we'll transition to ratings. I'll give this a... Nah, I mean, I honestly think it's perfect. I'll give this a 5 out of 5. Union negotiations gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, this one is definitely one of the standouts for Lex Luthor, and I've got kind of like a list of like Superman stories I recommend to people, and if all else fails, this is normally the one I give to people who are like, I just hate Superman. I'm just like, why are you gonna love this? That's kind of my default, and I legitimately have had that work sometimes, of where people have just been like, oh, that was great, I want to read more about Lex, and then by chance that gets them more invested in the Superman stories through Lex Luthor. So he's kind of like the brilliant disguise of, because you can't do that with Batman, because even Joker loves fucking Batman. Every one of his villains adores Batman. But with Luthor, you can just have that character who's just like, this fucking overpowered piece of shit, Goku could beat him in a fight. And you got that as a character. People dig that. So I definitely agree with you. This is definitely a classic. It's going to be one of those books that will always get recommended eternally, and deservedly so. I hesitate to call it perfect, because I do feel like there are... I guess part of me just wishes this was longer, with more dissecting aspects of, like, if this was my dream, I would love this to just be like almost like a companion piece to All-Star Superman, where it's just 12 issues of Lex Luthor's history. I feel like that could have been really interesting, but at the same time, I'm almost writing like a different book there. But for what it is and what it sets out to do, and just defines the microcosm of why these two characters are doomed to fight eternally, on a philosophical and intellectual battlefield. And you don't need Lex Luthor to beat Superman because getting in a mech suit and punching him, you can take him down with just intricate planning and a conversation. And Superman could do the exact same thing right back. That I think is fantastic. And for that, I will give it 4.5. Just, fuck it. I'll just do 5 as well. 5 out of 5. Aho Trunks.
Nice. Alrighty. Alfie, what are we going to be talking about next week?
I'm assuming it's going to be a discussion topic, right?
Yes.
Alright, do you mind giving me a week to get back into those that aren't Christmas themed?
Well, do you have just like a list of Christmas discussion topics on offhand, just ready to go?
I mean, normally. That's what I was waiting for.
Just fucking gift wrap. We're just gonna talk about gift wrapping for half an hour, for an hour and a half rather. Nah, it's all good. Yep. Let me know. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm Philosopher,
And I am the champion of the oppressed.
and we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.